Hello, and welcome to another episode of Disrupt Your Now, the show for entrepreneurs who are ready to shake things up. I'm doing something different tonight. My guest that was scheduled was sick tonight. So, my first inclination was, just don't do it. Take the night off. And then I thought, no, I don't want to do that because you know how it is going to the gym, eating right, whatever. If you don't do something and you get out of your routine, it's hard to get back in. So I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do something that people have been asking me to do. And I've just been putting off because I would much rather talk with other people than just talk myself and hear myself talking. But since people have been asking me to do this, I'm going to talk about my entrepreneurial journey and some of the lessons that I cover in Disrupt Your Now. For those of you who are not familiar with me, I started my first business in 1990, and I started it at probably the worst possible time that I could have. My husband, Tom, was getting ready to retire from the Navy, and he didn't want to stay in the defense industry, wasn't quite sure what he wanted to do, but we were in a city that was in a recession. So we could not have sold our house without losing money. The job market in that city was horrible. And we're just like, what the heck are we going to do? Well, I've always been one of these people that's like, you know what, just figure it out as you go. So we decided to start a business. But I'll tell you the reason that it was probably the worst time possible, aside from the economy and everything else. We had two babies. Our youngest was 4 months old, and the other one was 24 months old. My father-in-law, my husband's dad, had early Alzheimer's and was moving in with us. And I mean, just the whole stress of Tom retiring. So, anytime your family or you are in a time of big transition, that makes everything else that you're doing harder. But he was retiring in October. And in June, I started the business. I started out by making cold calls. And I had never done sales before in my life. So I started out by making cold calls all day long, every day, while my poor babies were in the other room. Long story short, when Tom retired in October, he didn't even get to take a day off from work because I had already built the business up to a point that he had a full time job to go to. Now, I want to take this moment to mention something about working with your partner, your spouse, your whatever, whoever it is. You One of the reasons that we were able to make this work for us is that we had our responsibilities. We stayed in our own lane. I was marketing, sales, accounting, finance. My background was an accountant. My degree is in accounting. I used to be a CPA. So I had my lane, the businessy stuff. Tom had his lane, which was operations. So it made it a lot easier for us to get along and not fight personally because of the way that we had things set up. So that's how we got started at the craziest time of our life. We started our first business. So fast forward 3 years, and it's like the business was really successful, but we knew by then it wasn't what we wanted to stay in. And if we had wanted to grow to the next level, we would have had to have invested way more than we did in those first 3 years. So we sold it, moved to the next thing. That was a new boat dealership and yacht brokerage. Built that up, made really good money, but in that business, you just got to keep rolling it into the business. And, we didn't think about this. It probably sounds really stupid, but if you're in anything like that, you need to work when everybody else isn't. So, holidays, weekends, when everybody else is off from work, that's when they're going and looking for things like boats. So, even though we were successful and even though we enjoyed the business, we knew it wasn't right for us. So, we sold that. Um, I'm in the business now that I actually started in 1996, which in 96, I started a web development company, web development and business strategy. And I just, even from the get-go, I recognized that the internet, even though these were dial-up days, I recognized that that's where my freedom was. Because more than anything, I valued freedom and the flexibility to live where I want to live, work with who I want to work with, and so forth. So I dropped my CPA license, dropped everything, started my web development company. So 96 to now, I still have the same business, but the business has constantly evolved over the years based on what was going on with our family. So we cared for his dad for over 8 years in our home. We raised our kids. I helped my father who had leukemia. We were in Florida. He was in Virginia. I came back and forth helping him. We moved to Virginia after he passed away. My mother ended up with Alzheimer's, and Tom and I cared for her the last 4 years of her life. I actually lived with her, and Tom lived in our home. They're very close together. But you see, our lives, it seemed like every year or two, something was changing. It was a constant evolution, but I was able to adapt my business and adjust and stay in business because of the way that I had built it. Now, you may be in a business that's harder to do because there's some businesses that you have to be in some place physically, things like that. But keep that in mind when you start the business, that figure out what your largest priority or highest priority is in life. So, anyway, what I'm going to do tonight is start going through a few of the lessons in the book Disrupt Your Now. So, if you're not familiar with this book, I interviewed 50 entrepreneurs from all over the world, and they range from world known people in their industry to a teenager who is on the spectrum. So, I had a wide variety of people from all different backgrounds so that anybody could find somebody that they relate to. And instead of doing whole chapters on people, it's built around very short stories, anecdotal stories of what these people went through. And each story ends with a lesson from Lisa. So it's a lesson that I pull out for the readers. And I like to call it a bathroom book for business because of the way that it's written, you can literally pick it up and start anywhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start going through some of the lessons from Lisa, not all of them, but I'm just picking and choosing, and I'm starting at the beginning. Hello, obviously, but it begins with you. The most important thing in you starting and building a business is that you remember who you are and what you find valuable in life, what your priorities are. So, this is what I tell my clients: it's your business, and you can make it anything you want. I have noticed over the years that most people who own a business and aren't happy, and I'm talking people who are making money, so not people who are miserable because they're broke, but people who are making really good money, and everybody else thinks, oh my God, they have it made. What people don't understand is that a lot of those people are miserable. And then they go, why am I so miserable? I've got all the money I ever wanted and everything like that. But here's the problem: most people who start a business only think about how much money they want to make. Oh, by the way, thanks, Jason. Jason Croft says he loves the book. Thanks, Jason. I appreciate you. So anyway, and this is how Tom and I were when we started out. We're like, how much money do we need to have to make it? Um, and so that's fine. You have to know how much money you need, but you need to think about more than that, because, like with us, you might be making really good money, but then you realize, God, this doesn't fit the lifestyle that I want to live. But here's the other thing: if you're only thinking about money, then the problem with that is there's always somebody else who's got more money. So no matter what you do, you're always going to be comparing yourself to other people, and you're never going to be satisfied. But that's why so many people get caught in these, what I call fur-lined mouse traps, of where they start a business, they're very successful, they're making lots of money, but when they built the business, they didn't think about, what is it that I really want out of life? If I had all the money I needed, but I were still going to work, what do I want my life to be like? Even the little things like, what times of the day do you have to work? Myself, I'm not a morning person, and I don't like schedules. I like to fly by the seat of my pants. So with my web development company, it didn't matter where I was, when I worked, or anything like that. And I only worked with people who I liked personally and I enjoyed working with, and people who weren't on a really strict schedule themselves, or if they were, it didn't matter to them what my schedule was as long as we got the work done. So that's an example of understanding yourself and building your business around it. Um, so one of the lessons is now is the time to decide the things that are most important to you and what you're willing to change to get them. The change to get them part is really important because you may know, oh my God, this is what I want. I want to live here, or I want this house, or I want to be able to work these hours, or whatever. But there is always going to be something that you have to change in order to get that. So you have to figure out what are the things that you have to change, what are the things that you have to sacrifice. In my case, with web design and development, it was a new industry. So I had to basically educate people on why they even needed what I was offering them, which is not something that I really like really like to do, but I had to overcome that. And I had to change the fact that I like project based work. I like things with a beginning and an end because I don't know. It just means that I don't have to do the same thing all the time and I don't get bored. But there were things in my thought process that I had to change. I had to be way more organized than I was before. You'd be surprised, even though I was an accountant, I had to be way more organized with web development. But figure out the things that are most important to you and what you are willing to change to get them. Secondly, I think that this has been really helpful to me. Figure out a way to encourage yourself to do something every day, even if it seems tiny, to reach your goals. One of the ways that I do this is with what I call 10-minute milestones. Every night, and again, y'all know I like to fly by the seat of my pants. I don't like to really plan things out. I don't like having a fixed schedule, but at the same time, there are things that I need to get done that if I don't do at least a little bit at a time, I'm never going to get them done. So every night, I think of one thing that I can spend 10 minutes on the next morning, the very first thing in the morning, that will make a difference in my life or my business in some way long term. So when I have these 10-minute milestones, it really helps me get motivated. It's rewarding because I have achieved something that I probably would have just kept putting off and putting off. And that makes me get more excited and makes me even more motivated to continue. But here's the kicker. When I say 10-minute milestones, I mean 10-minute milestones. I do not let myself go over that. So I have a really bad habit of, okay, I like to put things off because I'm a perfectionist. I only want to do it if I can do it perfectly. So when I start doing something, I get all into it, I get excited, then I don't want to stop. So with the 10-minute milestones, I have my 10-minute timer set, and no matter what, I stop. I do not allow myself to get sucked down that rabbit hole because I literally could get so deep into something that I would end up spending my whole day, and it would be great. The results I get would be great for the long run, but it might not be the thing that's most important that day. So these small milestones help me reach large milestones without having to do it all at one time. And the small successes help give me the motivation to face the day positively and to move forward in those big goals. Another thing is concentrate on what you can control rather than what you can't. This, in this time of our lives and the world, I think is really important for all of us to remember now, because so many of us spend our time worrying and bitching about everything that's going on in the world and about everything else. And it might be valid. It really might be valid problems. It might be valid bitches. But here's the thing, you cannot control it. It doesn't matter how much time you spend on Twitter tweeting at everybody, or how much time you spend complaining to your friends and family. what you're doing is not going to change the world. So concentrate on the things that you can control rather than the things that you can't. So in business, there are obvious things, but this also relates to your life and your view of the world. If you feel that people are not being helped as much as they should be by the government, for example, then you figure out a way that you can help one person, or figure out a way that you can volunteer at a certain place, um, so that you can help people on a regular basis. Don't just sit there and complain about what other people are doing. I can tell you myself from the boards that I've served on, the people who complain the loudest are usually the people who aren't doing a damn thing. So check yourself, see if that's you. Are you just complaining about everybody else, or are you actually doing something about the things that mean something to you? But insofar as your business, so that's kind of more personal, but insofar as your business, there's certain things that we just cannot control. You can't control how fast a prospect gets back to you on a proposal. You cannot control the budget that somebody has. You can't control whether somebody even understands the service that you're offering and that they really, really, really need it. So when you figure out the things that you can control, those are the things that you have to concentrate on. And it may be sending out more proposals, it may be working with a different niche. It could be all kinds of things, but just always remember that when there's something that you're stuck on or that you're obsessing about, think, can I control this? Is there anything that I can do that will make a difference? And if there's not, go to the next thing. Okay, so the next chapter is, if a blind man can mow the grass, you can do this. This chapter is all about making excuses. So, for those of you that don't know me very well, or maybe don't know me at all, my father was blind. And never, not one time in my life, did I ever hear him say, I cannot do that. And people probably think, she's exaggerating. No, I'm serious. I really cannot remember him ever saying that. He owned a business, he rode horses, he played basketball with us, he pitched baseball with my cousins. That we were all girls, and he played basketball with us. He pitched baseball with my cousins, guy cousins. Has no relevance, so I don't even know why I said that. But he even mowed the grass. And if you're curious, how does a blind man mow the grass? He did it barefoot, because when he did it barefoot, he could feel what grass had been mowed and what grass hadn't with his feet, because his sense of touch was so more sensitive than ours. So he literally mowed the grass with a push mower. There were no missed spaces. And so I'm going to tell you this, if a blind man can mow the grass, certainly you can figure out how to do something, how to do whatever it is that has you stumped. I look at him kind of half jokingly as a human Roomba, because if he ran into something that he wanted to do and it didn't work, couldn't figure out a way to do it, he just like backed up and went at it from another way. So think about that. Do not keep trying to do things the way that everybody else does them. If Daddy had done that, he would have never played basketball with us. He would have never mowed the grass. He would have never ridden his horse all over the place by himself, nobody else with him. And I want you to use inspiration for that, so that you can help challenge yourself to reach further than you would ever dream that you could. And that leads into the first lesson: stop using convenient excuses for not doing the things you're capable of. Obviously, him being blind was a great excuse. He could have sat there and said, I can't do anything. I need everybody to take care of me. Oh, another funny thing about him, he owned a woodworking shop in our basement. He even had a lathe, never cut himself. And one night a man came over. He was actually the principal of my elementary school, came over. Daddy was going to let him use the lathe. And that man was so worried that my father was going to cut himself that he cut the end of his own finger off because he was too busy looking at daddy and worrying about him. Now, that is a perfect example of you in your business. Stop looking at everybody else. Stop worrying about what they're doing. Pay attention to what you're doing. Do I mean ignore everybody else? No. Learn from other people's mistakes and successes. Watch things that are happening, watch developments in your industry, look for things that you should change, look for opportunities, but don't just build your business like everybody else is. Don't just go, oh, they're doing this, so I have to do it. They're doing this, so I have to do it. Don't cut your finger off because you're watching somebody else. Um, this next one, make a habit to consciously look for a positive way to look at anything negative. There's always a flip side. COVID is a great example of that. I know people who totally freaked out and they're like, oh my God, I can't do anything. And they just went into this black hole and basically set themselves up for failure. And I know other people whose businesses were more successful than they ever had been, and they are happier and more freed up than they ever were before because the challenges of COVID forced them to look at things differently, forced them to reassess what they were doing and to come at things a different way. So always remember, there's a flip side. Try to find the positive in anything negative. And mindset is everything. One of the people in the book is a great friend of mine, Sean Barksdale. Sean actually went to prison for 15 years for armed robbery. About a week or so before he was sentenced, he found out he was going to be a daddy. So, can you imagine going to prison, realizing that you're going to be a father, realizing that you have made this stupid mistake because, oh, by the way, following other people and doing stupid things? So, from the beginning, Sean knew that he did not want to settle for that. So he hadn't even finished high school. He sat on the floor of his cell and wrote out a list of goals. He said, I want to finish school. I want to study college courses. I want to learn about business. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be a good father. He had a whole list of things goals that he set for himself. He had no clue how to do it because of his background, but he set one goal at a time, and every single day he did at least one thing that would move him towards that goal. And when Sean got out 15 years later, he's now an entrepreneur. He's been out for a few years now, but he's now an entrepreneur. His daughter, who is an adult now, has finished college. They have a great relationship. He's a really good friend of mine. But he is a great example of that mindset is everything. And I will never forget that Sean told me, yes, I was in prison, but my mind was free. He did not let those four walls of his prison cell contain him. He learned as much as he could. He read books. He just decided, I'm not going to settle for this. So if he can do it when he's in prison, surely you can do it when you have the world at your fingertips. The next chapter is what's your victory condition? Now, this is something that I see so many people make the mistake of. And again, Tom and I did when we were first starting out. You start a business and okay, you know how much money you want to make, you kind of know the lifestyle, but you don't have a very specific goal that you are working towards. So, once I've reached this, this is when I will feel like I've been victorious. And so what happens is you just keep working, keep working, keep working with your nose to the grindstone. And I'm not saying that you should, once you reach your victory condition, that you should stop working. But what I am saying is have real goals that you're working towards. And when you reach those goals, take a minute to reassess and figure out, are there more goals down that same lane? Or are there ways that you can shift a little bit and go after goals in ways that I'm not talking about shutting down a business. or selling it unless you just want to. But I'm talking about reassessing your business along the way as you reach your goals and as your life changes, so that you are constantly assessing where you are in life, where you want to be, and are you getting there. I hope that makes sense. The other thing, it can be much easier to know what you don't want than what you do want. It can be really hard to say, this is what I really want, because it can be overwhelming. When you have so many choices, so much opportunity, it is hard to say, okay, these are the things that I want, especially when it comes to the way that you work. Um, Whereas the things you don't like, the things that you don't want to do. Just like I said, I don't like rigid schedules. I don't like having to do the same thing every day. That was one thing about accounting. I was so bored. I hated it because it's the same thing all the time. If I could have been a forensic accountant, I probably would have loved it, because that's solving mysteries. But this whole thing about auditing and just trying to catch people doing something wrong, or doing the same reports every week or every month, it sucked the soul out of me. So start with the things that you don't like, and then that will help you back into things that you do like. But here's the other thing, think about the things also that you're good at and not good at, because a lot of us don't even stop to think about that. We might know what we're good at, but we don't know why we're good at it. Or we might know we're not good at something else, but we don't know why. It's just like me with accounting. I didn't know why I didn't like it, even though I was really good at it. I didn't like it. And excuse me, it took me getting older and understanding myself more, and understanding the whole thing about, like I told y'all, I don't like repetitive work. I don't like the same thing, predictable things. I love challenges and I love mystery. I love learning new things all the time. If I had understood that about myself earlier, well, I probably would have never gone into accounting. But even if I had, I probably would have figured out a different way to go about that career. Um, so this kind of goes along with that. Focusing more inward can help you make better choices and help you feel more fulfilled in the long run. And this kind of ties in with everything I've been talking about, that when we're too busy looking at everybody else instead of thinking about ourselves and what we're feeling, it can be really hard to break out of a rut. It can also be really easy to go way down the wrong track. But it's so easy to look at everybody else. And it's so easy to feel like they have it made, they know everything. I'm going to tell you a little secret. Nobody does. Everybody that you think has it made, everybody that you think has this shit called life figured out, you're wrong. They don't. They are looking at other people that they think have it figured out. So learn to trust your gut, learn to recognize that cringy feeling you get in your stomach. Like with me, I'll give you an example. When I meet somebody, I used to just ignore it. If there was somebody, a potential client that I met, I was like, I need the money, just going to do it. Whether it was work I didn't really want to do, or somebody that I just didn't like and didn't think I would enjoy working with. As I got older, I learned to listen to that cringy feeling in my gut, or that just nauseous feeling sometimes. And by learning to do that, yeah, I'll lose some money in the short run, because if I say, oh, I'm not going to, work with you and whatever. Yeah, in the short run, I'm giving up that money, but I'm happier. It frees me up to go after better clients, better work that fits my personality better. So learn to trust your gut. Um, all of us, especially in America, we grow up, this is what you're supposed to do. Check off the boxes, do this, go to kindergarten, go to school, do this, do that, take these lessons. go to college or whatever, and you live your life checking off the boxes, and you're too busy checking off the boxes to think about, why is this box even here? And what's going to happen if I don't check it off? What is the worst thing that's going to happen? Now, I'm not telling people to quit school. I'm not telling people that you're never going to have to do something that you don't want to do. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying, please learn to listen to your gut and trust your own instincts. Um, this kind of goes along with that there's only one you. I think this is so common that we take ourselves for granted. We figure, oh, what we know can't be that important because we know it, So the things that other people know must be more important and must be more impressive. But what we forget is, excuse me, that every single one of us are a combination of all of our life experiences. And there is not one other person in the entire world that has your unique set of circumstances. If you can take a step back and learn to look at yourself through that lens, try to look at yourself how other people might, other people who don't have your experience and haven't gone through the trials and tribulations that you have, but also haven't had the successes that you have, that will help you start understanding who you might be able to help, how you might be able to help them, and how you might be able to approach them. So I know for myself, that's one thing I'm really bad about, taking what I know for granted, because, we're so used to what we know. We're too close to our own knowledge. So therefore, we look at everybody else. Please stop doing it. That's one thing that I'm working really hard on myself. So if you want to pinky swear with me, we'll work on it together. Skills and talents are portable across industries. The possibilities are limitless. Literally, every single industry needs certain skills and talents, but they might just need them in a different way. Let me try to think. I've lost my train of thought a little bit. I was trying to think of something. So, I'll give you an example. So, Steve Sims, the author of Blue Fishing, who is my mentor, Steve owned a luxury concierge service that was very, very successful, billionaire clients. And, to the outside world, he had it made. And he did. He loved his work. But when it got to the point that he had met the challenge and made the thing happen, and what he did just turned into a brag factor, then he reached the cringe moment. He reached that moment where it's like, oh, it just wasn't fun at that point. But after he wrote Blue Fishing and entrepreneurs discovered him and started reaching out to him, that's when he realized, oh my God, my skill set is portable. And so he transformed himself from a person who made bucket dreams come true for billionaires into helping entrepreneurs all over the world reach their dreams by going after the impossible and making it happen. So that's a really good example of that, of taking your skills and talents, recognizing the portability and port it over into another industry. Identify what's perceived as your greatest shortcomings to help uncover your greatest strengths. I'll give you another third party example instead of using myself all the time. So, Dr. Hobie Wedler, who is a great friend of mine, Hobie was born blind. And, everybody thought, oh, he can't go to school. He can't do this. He can't do that. And his parents just treated him just like they did his brother. And so Hobie never kind of realized there was something, quote unquote, wrong with him. He spent his life being curious and learning. And he decided he wanted to be a chemist. He wanted to study chemistry in college. And the professor told him, you can't do that because you're blind. And Hobie's like, well, you can't see an atom, can you? And then they're like, oh, well, you got a good point there. Anyway, Hobie got his doctorate in chemistry. He also made Forbes 30 under 30, and he was also named the champion of change by President Obama. But Hobie realized, yeah, he loved chemistry, but he didn't like teaching, which is what he thought he wanted to do. But his perceived weakness, what someone else would perceive as a weakness, that he was blind, what being blind does, one of the things that it does is it makes all of your other senses stronger. Just like I was telling y'all about daddy mowing the grass barefoot, all of your other senses become stronger because you're not relying on your sight. Those of us who are sighted, we basically ignore 85% of what we see. Because think about it, if you paid attention to everything, you would lose your mind. You just cannot process it all, so your brain filters it out. But Hobie and Daddy and other people like them don't. So Hobie tweaked his career, and now he works with companies to further develop their products by applying his heightened senses. He works with companies on product packaging because Hobie is very sensitive to the sound of the packaging, to the smell, to what it feels like. He's done things like Francis Ford Coppola Winery wanted to do an experiential type thing. So Hobie developed Tasting in the Dark. This is, I don't remember how many years ago, like maybe 8 or 10 years ago, and he developed this experience where people, and whiny people, wino, not winos, who are people that are really into wine. All I know how to do is drink it. I don't know how to, I'm not the type to sit around and say, oh, I smell this and taste that. But those are the kind of people that typically will go to those events. So Hobie brought them in, blindfolded them, and had them do tastings while they were blindfolded and talk about what they smelled, what they tasted, and their minds were blown. They could not believe the things that they didn't notice when they could see what they were drinking. And it was so successful that not only did the winery continue doing the experiences, they also used it as a training program for their salespeople because it helped the salespeople be better at explaining their products to the customers. Another example that he did with that is working with Dave Matthews Winery, the one that he has on the West Coast. He also has one here in Virginia. And Hobie took four of their wines and matched it with five of Dave Matthews' songs. So the first four wines were matched with a song. The last wine that he used was a rosé. So the first pour, it was with one of Dave's songs. And remember, the people are blindfolded. So the second pour was the exact same wine. It was a rosé, but it was a totally different song, different feel, tempo, everything. And everybody thought it was a totally different wine. Most people thought it was a Chardonnay. I think all of them thought it was a white wine. Most of them thought it was a Chardonnay. And it blew their mind because that is an example of how much just your hearing affects your taste. So why don't you try that sometime? I don't know, you either need to get somebody to do it with, or you need to like fake yourself out by hiding something and not letting yourself know what you pick. But that would be really a really fun thing to try out. Figure out ways that you can test your own hearing or sight or smell or taste or whatever, and see how it changes with whether you are looking at the product or not. Next is I'll tell you, one of the biggest mistakes that I made as an entrepreneur was not recognizing how much I needed to surround myself with other people. I'm really, I'm going to say I'm a loner, and that doesn't mean that I don't have a lot of friends. I have a lot of friends, have a big network, but I've always been, and I don't know, maybe I got it from daddy. I've always been one of these people, I can do it. I don't need help, and I think it also comes from being a middle child. I'm one of these people, I stick things under my arms and hold them between my legs and everything instead of asking somebody to open the door for me or whatever. So I'm just one of those people. I'm very self-reliant and don't ask for help. It took me up until about 4 or 5 years ago to understand that I really needed a mentor. And that's when I started working with Steve Sims, the guy I told you all about earlier. If I had started doing that, working with somebody earlier, it would have made a tremendous difference in my business because it gives you that outside perspective. You know, the old saying, you can't see the forest for the trees. When you're in the middle of something, you cannot see the whole picture. So you're only looking at the things around you. You're not getting the big picture. You're missing a lot of the information. Where when somebody else looks at it right off the bat, they see something obvious. That's why with my clients, a lot of times I'm like, oh, well, why don't you just do such and such? They're like, oh my God, you're brilliant. I'm like, no, I'm just looking at it for the first time, you know? And so it really is true that when we're used to looking at something, we see what we expect to see, and we think in the same thought processes that we always do. So we're chugging down that line instead of going, oh, we might be able to divert over here. So I highly, highly recommend to you that you build your network in a smart way, that you surround yourself with awesome people like Jason Croft. He's so much fun. Y'all got to go back and look at the episode of him being on the show. But he's one of the awesome people that I've met in the past year and building a relationship with. But there are also people who have multiple coaches. You don't have to have a coach, but you've got to have mentors. And I would recommend having multiple mentors or coaches or whatever you want to call them. So whether it's somebody that you're paying or whether it's somebody who's older and more experienced that will kind of take you under your wing, you can never have too many people to learn from and guide you. I also want to encourage you to choose your clients wisely and remember that you always have the right to say no. That's one of the things that I mentioned earlier about where I would say that I might take, or I didn't listen to my gut and didn't listen to the cringe factor. So this goes along with that. A lot of times when you work with somebody that maybe your gut has told you that you shouldn't, you end up so much worse off because most of the time you'll end up spending more time for less money. And so you've got the anxiety, you've got the stress, and then you may have taken the project or the client because you're like, oh, I got to do it because I need cash flow. But then you turn around and they're hurting your cash flow and you're spending even more time. So you're even worse off. So choose your clients wisely. And remember, you always have the right to say no. You do not have to work with anybody. I also want you to create your own luck. You should create your own luck by constantly seeking out opportunity and being ready to seize it when you find it. I think that one of the things that is the hardest for people with that is that maybe we see opportunity, but we feel like, well, it can't be that great of an opportunity, or I wouldn't have noticed it. Surely somebody else would have noticed it before me. And that might be an opportunity for a client, or it might just be a new way of doing things. Because remember, just because everybody else is doing it the way that they're doing it does not mean that that's the way it has to be done. If that were true, no inventions would ever be made because everybody would just keep doing the same thing. Um, let's see. You don't have to have your life's journey completely mapped out to be successful and fulfilled. This part I love. Sorry, even though I wrote it. It's a unique tapestry that you can create as you go. This kind of goes back to the check mark thing. It's your life. You only get one life. So when you are checking off the boxes and just doing okay, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do that, you're not taking the time to step back and look at your life as a whole and think, is this what I want the tapestry of my own life to look like? I know that probably sounds hocus pocus to people or new age or whatever, but I'm serious. You really, really need to take that time because that is why so many people at the end of their life are unhappy, or that old saying of nobody dies wishing that they'd made more money. You know, they do die wishing that they'd spent more time with their family, or that they'd helped other people more, or all kinds of things. But very, very rarely are you going to find somebody who dies wishing that they had worked harder and made more money. So concentrate on the tapestry of your life, of course, within your responsibilities. I'm not telling you to go dump everything because you want to go frolicking through the fields and picking up daisies, and but try to build a life that you're going to look back on as being proud of, and a legacy that you are leaving in some way you've helped others. Look for opportunities to make others smarter, and don't be afraid to reach out to important companies or people. You know, that old saying about everybody puts their pants on the same way, or one leg at a time, or something. I don't know. But it's true. Just because somebody is important, or really wealthy, or really famous, that doesn't mean that they're any different from you. The main thing that it means is that they have a lot more people chasing them, and they have a lot more people who would just love to ride their coattails and not give anything back. They're just looking to make something off of them. Um, but you've got something important to bring to those people. So if there's somebody out there that you really admire, or that you see you've recognized the potential for something, some way that you can help them, don't be afraid to reach out. I mean, the worst that's going to happen is no. And it's like my friend Andrea Waltz. She is the author of Go for No. She and her husband wrote Go for No. Every no leads you closer to a yes. So getting a big no is way better than getting a little yes. And if you get enough big no's, eventually you're going to get a big yes. So don't be afraid to reach out to people who seem like they would never give you the time of day. I will say, though, don't reach out selfishly. Don't reach out because you want something. That the whole thing of lead with giving, you know. But when you lead with giving, don't do that selfishly. Don't be thinking, oh, if I give this, I'm going to get that. Give without expecting anything in return. And then if you do get something in return, that's great. But if you don't, somebody somewhere is going to notice it, or that person will remember it. So don't be afraid to ask, and lead with giving. Um, this next one is my cousin is a screenwriter and a producer, and he said the best thing I ever did was go to Elaine's. I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with Elaine's, the restaurant that used to be in Manhattan, and Stuart Woods, his books. I cannot think of the Stone something. I can't think of the detective's name in it, but that detective always went to Elaine's. And, the whole thing was the food is horrible, but everybody goes there for the people, because everybody is there. Everybody who was anybody was there. Well, it really is true. It's so funny. I've been reading about this restaurant for years in Stuart Wood's books. I think that's who it was. Yeah, Stuart Woods. And then Buddy told me, he's like, yeah, the best thing I ever did was go to Elaine's. I'm like, what? And so he started telling me about it. He goes, yeah, it's true. The food was really bad, but everybody who was anybody was there. And he said every great contact that he made in the entertainment industry, in the writing industry, came either directly or indirectly. No, I'll say not the very first one, because that came from when he was a kid as a writer, and he made a connection in the music industry that he turned into signing a band, and their very first record album went, I think it was platinum, and it won a Grammy. So that was way before. But once he got to a certain age, he said the best thing he ever did was go to Elaine's. He went to a place that he knew people who had the connections that he needed were at. So he surrounded himself with those people, and he got to know people personally and was able to turn that into a decades long career in TV and film. Just being around people who are more successful than you helps challenge your thought patterns and can truly push you to new heights. I've probably said this several times. One of the biggest mistakes, but I'm going to say it again. People love, we don't like to feel challenged. We don't like to feel like we're not smart. So we have a tendency to hang around with people who are like at our level or maybe a little bit lower. And there are too many of us who like to be the smartest person in the room. If you're the smartest person in the room, you need to get the hell out because you're not learning anything. That doesn't mean that you should never spend time with people who aren't as smart as you, but you always need to surround yourself with people who are smarter and more successful than you, people who will push you, and people who will ask you, well, why are you doing it? Why are you doing that? Or why are you doing it that way? Or even if they're not asking you, you're just watching them and realizing by osmosis that you could be doing things differently. I'm going to backtrack though. I'm not just talking about money because remember, there's nothing wrong with money. Hey, I like money just as much as everybody else, but you've got to figure out your higher purpose and figure out what you really really want besides money. So surround yourself with people who are further along than you, who know more than you, who are more successful than you, and are living the kind of life that you would like to live. And you can absorb some of that knowledge and experience by osmosis. Plus, that as you get to know them and become friends with them, you never know what doors they might open. So I'm going to stop there because I could keep talking forever. I've got the 50 entrepreneurs that are in this. So 50 entrepreneurs, 102 stories, and each one ends with a lesson for me, 102 lessons from Lisa. And I can tell you, it was the third book I wrote, and I had so much fun writing it because I got to talk with amazing people from all over the world. A few of them I already knew, most of them I did not know at all. They were introduced to me by friends who knew I was writing the book. So I went from, I was planning on including like probably 12 people, and I ended up with 50. And I finally had to stop because I was like, okay, at some point I got to write this book. So, excuse me, when I got to 50, that's when I was like, okay, I'm cutting it off here, but I'm already working on the next one. And this book, Disrupt Your Now, this band across it is because it's approved. This is Disrupt My Now. This is the workbook for Disrupt Your Now that it will be coming out in the next week or two. I just have a couple of changes that I need to make and I keep putting it off. But I'm really excited about this because there are a lot of people who love the book and want to work on making those changes, but they feel overwhelmed. They're not sure where to start, and maybe they can't afford to work with me, or maybe they're just like kind of like me, people who like to do it themselves, whatever. So I did Disrupt Your Now, built around the 5 sections of this of Disrupt Your Now, and I wrote Disrupt My Now, built around those 5 sections. And it starts out with you and what you want and what you like and what you don't like and what you're good at. But it asks you questions, and it's got, for each question, it's got a page for you to answer. And they're asked in a way that hopefully challenges you to push your mind and really think hard about it. I'll be honest, I've actually used it myself. That's one thing, one good thing about writing the book. It's helped me reassess my business, which I'm always reassessing anyway, but it's kind of forced me to look at my business in a different way as well. But so this works you through the entire book with in-depth questions, and then it's also got some worksheets and resource sections at the back. It's got like mind mapping and helpful tips for becoming a digital nomad. It's got notes about automation, about how you can automate things in your business. And it's got information about my sandwich marketing method. That's something that I developed for economic developers when I was speaking at a national conference. Because I'm like, When you build a sandwich, y'all are probably familiar with the Dagwood sandwich, huge sandwich with all this stuff. That's how most people build their marketing campaigns. They're like, I got to use every single social media platform. I've got to do every single type of ad. I got to do this, got to do that. And they have this big mess that is unfulfilling, wastes a lot of money, and doesn't achieve their goals. And then they wonder, why isn't it working? But you think about it, there's so many different kinds of hamburgers. You don't eat the same kind of hamburger all the time. If you are in a hurry or on a really tight budget, you might run through the fast food drive-through. If you are going on a date and you want burgers, but you want something nicer, you might go to a gourmet burger restaurant. So you need to fit your sandwich, your marketing sandwich, to your goals and your strategy. So the whole thing is about bread is the goals and strategy, and meat is the tactics, and cheese is traditional advertising because you either use it or you don't. Um, anyway, I've got it broken down like that into the different components of the sandwich to try to help you to help you look at marketing a different way. So it's just weird. I mean, you might not like it. If you do, I don't care. But I'm just weird and I like to come up with different analogies to help, and it's helped a lot of people. So Disrupt My Now is the name of it, and I'll be really excited to finally get it out. I'm also working on the audiobook for Disrupt Your Now and the book that I wrote before that, Boomer Cash Out. This book was written, it's very, very short. It's written in layman's language to help people understand, especially boomers, how they can increase their businesses' value and marketability to sell for retirement. Because you may not be aware, but only a third of businesses ever sell, and the rest just close down. So if you ever want to be able to sell, you need to be thinking strategically about how you can make your business more likely to sell and likely to sell for more. So thanks for joining me tonight. I hope something that I said was helpful. And if y'all enjoyed it, I'll come back another time and go through some of the lessons in the rest of the book. Thanks a lot. And I will see y'all next week with a guest. Have a great week, y'all.